What a nice little discussion we seem to have here. As most of you would know, or probably don't know, Black Bond has asked, what's the problem, backwards compatibility between my PS3
It's 8
and
o'clock.
Xbox 360 don't have backwards compatibility. And then, Samuel the Tech Geek replied, and this kid replied to Samuel the Tech Geek. First of all, what Sam said about the 360 backwards compatibility and it all being fucked up, yeah, it's pretty fucked up. And not only that, to make it even more fucked up, the original games that came with the came when the original Xbox first shipped out, and most of those games were coded in such a not very good way that they wouldn't work with later Xboxes, original Xboxes that came out near the end of its cycle history. And of course, they're just as far as their backwards compatibility is concerned, it's just non-existent. It's just no way. Their coding is just so bad. Nothing wrong with the game. It's just something went wrong with the coding and putting them on the CD. And Microsoft learned a very valuable lesson there. And of course, going from Intel to a power processor and emulations has made things even worse. But anyways, he held up a PS2 box and said the reason why PS3 doesn't have backwards compatibility is because the PS2 is still on market. No, that's not true. That is nowhere near the truth. First of all, if you look up PS3 backwards compatibility problems, you'll find this little video. you know, PS2 game with being run on a PS3 and a PS2, of course. And of course, you can tell there's something wrong with the PS3. It's just fucked up. And of course, the main reason is that Sony, when they built their PS2 and their PS1, which also is a part of this little mess, used proprietary parts. The PS2 was used with an emulation processor, and of course, then they moved to the IBM cell processor. Oh, IBM slash Motorola, whatever. Um, Cell processor, which Sony also helped develop, which is why they pushed for the cell processor. And of course, cell processor being, a one core that's a master core that goes over to the slave cores, and yet one of the slave cores is shut off. I don't know why. So PS3, the original PS3 had some serious fucking problems with their backwards compatibility and why they just couldn't get it to work at all. Of course, there was changing resolutions and TV resolutions, which was a part of the problem. Another part of the problem is just they also made the PS3 backwards compatible, not just with PS2, but also with PS1. So you had PS1, PS2, and PS3, and they were planning on making PS4 where it would be backwards compatible with PS3, PS2, and PS1. Sony, what kind of drugs are you on to think you can just do this? Make everything backwards compatibility and then run every single game out there. Even Nintendo knew this was impossible. And of course, Nintendo has way more arcade systems, and yes, I'm well aware that the Nintendo 64 was cartridge based. But they made the Nintendo Wii backwards compatible with the GameCube and pretty much made the rest of their previous consoles all downloadable content, which was a lot more better of an idea. Of course, they also got other consoles like Sega Genesis and other more good games, and so forth and so forth. But then again, hmm, you know, of course, Sony and I am Microsoft weren't the only first people to deal with backwards compatibility. That belongs to Atari when they came out with their 5600, saying it was going to be backwards compatible with the 2600 arcade Atari, and of course it wasn't. And of course the 5600 had a crappy controller that nobody liked and hardly ever worked. So everybody went back to the 2600, and the 56 just died. So, but anyways, what Sony did was they put one processor over another with their, as well as the GPU, layering over layering over layering, and they fucked it up. PS1, PS2, and PS3. And it just completely messed it up. Yes, the PS3 was backwards compatible with PS1. And of course, Sony to cover up their. And yes, it was also costing them a shitload of money, anyways, and to cut cost, which I believe IMULL3 has pretty much stated, and he is right. But, it was really just two reasons. Sony wasn't getting their backwards compatibility correct, and it was costing them too much money. So they just came out with a letter saying, well, we're not going to have backwards compatibility because most of our customers already have PS2s. Which was just blatant BS because most of those people who bought their PS3s sold their PS2s. But, yeah, tell me what you think.